What do we find at the intersection of faith and the world? Our new podcast, Crossroads, explores this question in thought-provoking conversations featuring guests from around the world who are seeking to live faithfully in the public square. This is a safe space to discuss politics, technology, and our responsibilities as citizens. Pull up a chair and meet us as we search for a better way forward. Welcome to Crossroads, where we discuss the intersection of sacred and civic. I'm your host, Joe Owens. Today, we have some very special guests from the Cathedral staff joining us, our stonemasons Joe Alonso, Sean Callahan, and Brianna Castelli. We are chatting on one of my visits here to the Cathedral, and I am so glad that you all out there will get to know these talented folks who bring such life to our Cathedral. All right, Joe, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself.
I'm Joe Alonso. I'm the head stonemason here at the Cathedral, and I've been here since 1985. My job is to take care of the masonry fabric of the Cathedral, overseeing our fantastic crew and everything that this big pile of stone here that we have entails.
Fantastic. All right, Sean, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sean Callahan. I came to the Cathedral as an apprentice in 1987 and stayed till it was completed in 1989. Then I was a freelancer, and then Joe hired me back in 2005.
All right, Brianna.
I'm Brianna Castelli. I've been here since January 24, so 8 months. I'm a carver and mason here.
All right, so that brings up a really interesting question. Carver and mason. So what is a stonemason? What does that work at the Cathedral look like? It is a very large stone building. And then we have our amazing carving. So talk to us about the difference between those and the scope of this work.
Yeah, the Cathedral, you hear the term throughout the world, stonemason would encompass carving. In the UK, they'll say, I'm a mason, they carve. Here, generally, the masons were always here at the Cathedral, and the carvers, the two trades were separate. I served my apprenticeship in the Stonemasons Union here in Washington, D.C., and I focused on the construction end. So we had the masons who were the ones up on the scaffolding, building the building, assembling the stones, all of that. We can cut stone and shape stone, but I by no means go around calling myself a carver. Miss Sean, Andy, Brianna, the amazing gifts that they have. But I'm more on the construction end, and that's how it's always been with being a stone mason here. You're the builder end of things.
All right, Brianna and Sean, talk to us about the carving side.
Well, I was saying, I was started as apprentice as a carver, and like he says, in those days, the carvers had their own space to work, and the masons were up on the building setting stone. But nowadays, to survive as a freelancer, I had to do all aspects of the trade, so you couldn't always find work as a carver, so you just kind of do whatever is available at the time. So now I'm back on staff again. Our title is a mason, but we do all aspects. So it involves a lot of restoration work, especially with the earthquake. So involving things like Dutchman repair, which is where you just cut a piece of damaged stone away, put in a new piece, and then carve it to match in place. Or we have new lettering going in all the time, so we have to do layout. And in the crypt, oftentimes there's new names going in.
Well, tell them about your latest project.
Well, we have a new statue going in of St. Phoebe, going in over by the park close. We have the Chaz Fagan as a sculptor, so another thing as a carver, as opposed to a sculptor, we translate the sculptor's work into stone. So he works in clay, and we'll have his model cast into plaster, and then I will copy that on the wall. So that'll be going in over the winter time.
Wonderful. Brianna, anything to add?
He said it pretty good.
Oh, I like your story. You got to tell them how you got into
how did you get into this?
I started kind of like how Joe started. I did my apprenticeship with the BAC Bricklayers Union, and kind of like what Sean was saying, you have to do what you can to survive. So they have bricklayers, they have tile setters, they have stonemasons, and restoration workers, like all under one umbrella. So anyways, I completed my apprenticeship for 4 years up in Philadelphia, just doing whatever was necessary, learning kind of like all aspects of the masonry trade. And then coming down here is more specialized. Nothing you can learn in the outside world will prepare you for this, but it's cool because it's taken what I've already learned and just added to it.
Refine it.
Yeah.
It's like we're kind of opposites. Like you start out as more as a setting mason and picked up the fabrication side where I started out as a fabricator.
And I had to pick up the rest.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're kind of coming out from opposite ends.
Yeah, Brianna came to us with a good basis of stone cutting and carving. But yeah, nothing prepares you for the level of work that we do here. I don't care where you came from, right, Bree? I mean, you end up on this cathedral and you're just surrounded by all this incredible architecture and workmanship and carving. Even as a mason, I came here in 1985 as a journeyman, experienced mason. But coming here when we were building the towers, this type of stonework, just these massive blocks of limestone that we lay, just isn't done that much anymore. So
who's building cathedrals, right?
Right. Who's building a cathedral anymore?
Yeah. So I'm guessing that there aren't a lot of full-time positions like this available around. Is that true? Am I off base? Because I truly have no idea.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you can see our staff. Now there's 4 of us, but for the longest time, it's been Andy and Sean and myself. Now, the earthquake has changed so much, the amount of damage that occurred to the cathedral. So we do bring on subcontractors. We have a fantastic masonry restoration contractor, Lorton Stone, who, when we do a particular earthquake repair phase, they come in with the manpower that helps us out. But the carving and the fine carving and the stone cutting that we do is still done in our in-house staff. And we were fortunate enough to be able to bring Brianna aboard. Well, because, we're not exactly, Andy and Sean and I are
we're
not getting much, we're not getting any younger, as they say. So it's great that we were able to bring Bri on and now trying to show her what we've learned over the years.
Do you feel the weight of the future of cathedral stonemasonry and carving on you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful for my position here, just being able to learn from Sean and Andy as carvers and like Joe as a mason. Like, they just know so much and they're so good at what they do, and to be like around them for any amount of time is really special. So yeah, I'm grateful.
Truly passing the torch to the next generation.
Yeah, they passed it to us. I mean, I came on board and my predecessor, Billy Cleland, that's another name that should not be forgotten here at this cathedral. Billy was the head mason, master mason of the cathedral from the early 1970s to the late, I took over in 1990. And, before him, guy named Eddie Fall. Before him, the guy named Alec Ewan. I mean, those were the great masons who go back to the 1920s at this place. And of course, Sean, I mean, you could talk about Vince Palumbo, and before him, anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
I was saying Vince Palumbo hired me, and his father was a sculptor and carver who worked here before him, and Roger Marigi was here. Yeah, so it was like, all the old timers then. It's like, I guess I'm the old timer now. Doesn't feel, I don't feel like it though, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I always say, we did learn from them. They learned from their predecessors, and it's like...
Yeah, it's good just to be around those people and just kind of absorb.
Yeah, absorb.
Yeah, just every day you don't realize you're learning. You're just kind of doing it, and before you know it, you're becoming more proficient. It's just a gradual process. You just soak it in.
Yeah, the guys I was around, the old builders and masons, and even the old helpers who had been around for so many years, their accumulated knowledge, I think back now on all the little stuff you learn when you're up on the scaffold, and just, these old guys from back then. I think of an old gentleman, Otto was his name, Otto Epps. Otto came to the cathedral in like 1951 and worked with many of the old stonemasons, and he would tell stories. If you see that photo of us laying the final stone on the cathedral, there's 3 of us up on the scaffold, myself, Canon Feller, who was the clerk of the works in charge of all the construction. But the other gentleman up there that people shouldn't forget about is Otto. And we asked that Canon Feller made sure that Otto was up there with us because he worked with so many of the old stonemasons. And if you look in that photograph, Otto is holding the silver ceremonial trowel that was used to lay the foundation stone of the cathedral in 1907. And we had it up on the scaffold with us on September 29th, 1990 to lay the final stone. But that was really cool. And having Otto up there, Otto was great. He was always, he used to say to me, I like working with you young guys. Those old stonemasons were always drinking and fighting.
So for those of you listening at home, we will have a link in the show notes that actually links to an article titled Celebrating Joe Alonso, Cathedral Rock Star. I don't know if you knew this was on the Cathedral blog, but in that blog post is the picture that Joe is talking about. So you can go and see that picture laying the final stone for the cathedral and the silver trowel that Otto is holding. So we've talked a bit about how stonemasons and carvers work at the cathedral, but I'm curious about the wider profession. What is it like for stonemasons out in the world who might not be at a cathedral or have such steady work? What is the field like?
It's a hard trade. You start out when you're young, being beat up. I mean, my knees are shot because I spent, my first years building field stone walls and such. So it's, very hard physical work, and it's very weather dependent. Another thing I find, being fortunate to work here, we can work year round. If it's a rainy day, we've got work. A lot of times in the mason trade, when it's raining, you go home, and really working in any kind of trade, you get paid by the hour. So you don't work, you don't get paid. And again, nowadays with just new construction, everything is go, and cutting, cost cutting. So workmanship or the designs are very simple. I don't know how much more simple they can get with some stuff in this masonry trade now. And you're losing that aspect of the trade, this handmade, this hand-built quality, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, coming from just Philly, a lot of the stonemasons work, you kind of either were in a new construction world or restoration. And the restoration has more similar to what we're working on here, I would say. But like a new construction job, it's marble panels and you're setting panels on hooks. Instead of what we have here is mass masonry walls, which is like you're doing a layer of brick and then you're doing stone up against the brick. Like they would have a CMU and then a bunch of like weather protectants and then your marble panels. So it's different. You're not like cutting a stone and shaping it and setting it.
You're literally hanging it.
You're hanging it, yeah. And then the restoration, it's cool because there's a lot of, especially on the East Coast, a lot of old buildings that need love. Mm-hmm. So I would say if anything for the trade, like there's a lot of restoration based work, but again, it's different than what we do. It's a lot of people don't like to spend time on doing like stone repairs, like the Dutchman that Sean was talking about earlier. They'll do mortar replacement repairs because it's cheaper and you don't need as much skill and you don't maybe have the tools. So like these mortar repairs, they're patches and you just throw them in and shave them back instead of carving like we do.
Well, and the technicians may not have the know-how how to carve stone.
Right.
So, specifically the carving, it's hard to find work full-time as a carver because like there's no new construction. So I adapted by becoming a restoration carver and mason. And that's where a lot of the trade is now. Like, and in Europe, same thing. They're all working on old cathedrals and castles, and there's always people that want to do the trade, that want to work in the trade. So there's a shortage of available opportunities. So a lot of carvers out there now you have to be a good salesman, and because you're oftentimes going to be freelancing and trying to drum up private commissions for garden sculptures or whatever there is out available. Like when I was an apprentice here, there was about, a dozen apprentices in the shop, a couple of journeymen and a master carver. So that kind of setup is pretty rare now. So I literally just knocked on the door and got a job. So I had the opportunity to learn from people that are already in the trade. So that sort of thing is hard to find now, where a big, large-scale job where you have a master, a journeyman, and an apprentice all on the same site. It's kind of, I don't know where you'd find that in the States anyway.
Yeah, everything is go, even, some of the restoration jobs you were on in Philly, right? What was the longest one you were on? The bank?
Yeah, it was about a year, and that's the longest. Otherwise, you're jumping from job to job. Could be a couple days, couple weeks. Wow. The year was like, whoa, this is home now, So you're just bag of tools on you always and jumping around, and you have to like have a broad skill set so that you can jump from job to job. Because again, you also don't know what you're going to be doing. It's not like you're doing the same thing. It's just whatever they need. Like if you're going to cut out some joints on a job, or if you're going to repoint on a different job.
Yeah. So talk to me about carving styles. As art changes over time, we see differences in art styles and techniques and materials used. Is the same thing true in carving work?
Yeah, there's you can see it evolve on the building itself. You see the on the eastern end, there's a much rougher kind of Gothic revival style that you see in place, and then as you move forward and west on the building, through the decades, the style does change, and you see a lot more modern elements brought in, and more whimsical details are brought in. But as far as individual style, every carver probably does have their own style. But when you're doing restoration, you're trying not to have a style. You're trying to reproduce what someone else did before. So that can be a challenge when you're trying to mimic someone else's style and it doesn't really sync with what you innately have. So that's a challenge. That's more challenging than carving something new.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there's definitely, every carver has his own style. And the architects and the sculptors will have their own style. And that's another challenge, is trying to copy a sculptor's very intentional, the way he treated just the lines on the sculpture or the shadows. So there's all kinds of things come into play that you have to adjust your own temperament with. So it can be tricky. Yeah.
I see Brianna nodding along. Do you have anything to add?
There's this piece I'm working on right now that you can tell this carver was going pretty quickly to do these crocket pieces. And yeah, we're having to like recreate his speediness. And Sean was explaining to me like, oh, but if you could just make this a little gentler of a curve, it would turn out a lot better and for the end piece. But you have to like hold yourself back from making it how you would do, like he said.
Fascinating. So you all celebrated a milestone just last week. You want to share what that milestone was?
Yeah, last Friday, the 23rd, was the 13th anniversary of the earthquake. Yeah, we've been, it's 13 years that Sean and Andy and I were walking around the cathedral going, wow. What?
Kind of numb, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a day.
Yeah, what a day. Sean and I, especially, I remember Sean and I were the first ones that made it up to the top of the central tower. And yeah, I remember when we opened that door. And there's still a great, photo of Sean that I took that day. And, the towers, just the roof of the towers just littered with broken crockets and finials. And just crazy, unbelievable. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it was
an
earthquake. Surreal experience, yeah. I remember being in the shop and being shaken around a little bit. I was on my bench and I came out and just kind of what just happened. And then I look up and see the towers are all just disheveled. I was like, man, it just got surreal. Yeah,
and then you made your way up there. Andy and I were working on the west front, and I heard what I thought were explosions. I was hearing this, and I thought that for some reason that we have these big air conditioning condensers on the roof there of the wings out there, and I don't know why I thought one of them exploded, but actually it was the sound of falling masonry hitting the roofs, and then immediately people started running out of the west front, out of the building. And I think it was a regular tourist day. It was a Tuesday, I think. And and then Andy and I, after we've figured out what was going on, we thought, gosh, get everyone away from the building, get away from the building. We were thinking that, I don't know, that the facade pieces from the, we knew all the intricate stuff that's way up there. And we were thinking how much of this is going to fall off. So get away from the building, get away from the building. And then the quake lasted 58 seconds. And it was over, and we're like, wow. And that's when we started seeing a crowd of people started gathering on the north lawn. And they were all looking up. They were looking up at the central tower. Again, Andy and I were on the west end, so we didn't see. And that's when we came around and looked up and, saw the pinnacles just like a Jenga game up there.
Wow.
Yeah. I was struck by, I came on the south side, and all the tourists were like going around picking up pieces of stone.
Souvenirs.
Same thing. I was like, get away from the building. We don't know how.
We don't know what else is going to fall off.
Right. So I said, just get away. Don't mosey around. Just get away. And then we linked up in the front there. Yeah. It was a surreal afternoon.
You also completed something having to do with the earthquake. Was it last week or?
Yeah, well, pretty much. You can say we're completed. It was 99.5% completed. But yeah, we've completed this week, actually. By this Friday,
okay.
We will have 100% completed our latest earthquake restoration phase, which is the southeast grand pinnacle of the south transept. And that will complete the entire south side of the cathedral. So all that scaffolding you see there, the closed up lawn there on the south that we had full of stones, all of that scaffold will be going away. So by the end of the year, let's say by Christmas, all that'll be gone. And the south transept entrance, in my opinion, the south tympanum, the Last Supper, in my opinion, the most magnificent facade entrance on the cathedral will finally be free of all that ugly scaffolding and such. So we'll be done there on the south side, and we're in the midst now of moving our operation to the north side of the cathedral, where we'll be building our staging area and yard for the last couple of phases. We've got several flying buttresses on the north side of the nave that we'll be repairing next year, 2025, but we'll also be starting and preparing for the big one, which is the top of the central tower, which we hope to get going on then in 26. And then that'll take, I'm looking at 4 years on that. So yeah, but hopefully by the, end of the decade here, whatever, 2028, 29, whatever, be up there on that tower finishing it up.
That's incredible. You all have been working on this for so long, and we've kind of gotten used to seeing the scaffolding around the cathedral. It's going to be a shock when there isn't any scaffolding anymore.
Right. I always say, though, what's a cathedral without some scaffolding on it?
Yeah. So today, as we close, I usually ask folks, where do they find hope and whatever our topic is, but I have a different closing question for you all. Since you all know the carvings of the cathedral so well, what is an interesting carving, one of your favorites, perhaps something that visitors might be able to spot on their visit that they might not otherwise see? What are some of those hidden gems?
One of my favorites, and you can make it out from the ground. It's on the west end of the cathedral, sticking out of the northwest tower. So if you're standing there at the plaza, and you have the two towers coming up, the north tower and the south tower. So the north tower on your left, kind of right above the windows of the observation gallery. There's gargoyles sticking out up there, but there's a very unique gargoyle that, if you look closely, it's the two hands in the golfer's grip. And it's two hands, and gargoyles have a pipe going through them, and it drains that section of the roof. But this was a tribute that was carved for Roger Merigi, who was the cathedral's master stone carver back from like the 1950s to the 70s, to the late 70s when he retired. And then Vince took over, who Sean and Andy apprenticed under. But anyway, Roger was an avid golfer, so they carved this set of hands in the golfer's grip in tribute to Roger. And it's like, okay, kind of interesting, right? It's different, but
you wouldn't expect that.
No, the golfer's grip. Yep.
There we go. Thanks, Joe. All right, Sean or Brianna?
Well, I was thinking actually it's a piece of in the cathedral that's not carved. It's on the north side on the buttresses. It's where I think the only fatality on the site when it was under construction was the carver fell there. And so as a tribute to him, they didn't, where he was working, they left it uncarved.
Fell to his death.
Yeah.
It was the only construction fatality in the cathedral in the 83 years of construction.
Wow.
So when you look down the line, you'll see the grotesque, and then there's one buttress that stands out because they're just square blocks projecting out of it. So that's intentional, never going to be carved there. Another place I like is it's not hard to spot. It's the moat on the choir end on the apse, just because it's so unusual to other cathedrals. Because most cathedrals have radiating chapels around the high altar. This one does not. It just has these very long flying buttresses on the back going down to a moat. So you have windows on the crypt level. So that whole structure is, I don't know of another cathedral that's like that. So.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, so that's always been a kind of neat spot for me.
Yeah, the stained glass down there in the apse is in Bethlehem Chapel is so beautiful. I think my favorite, I have so many favorites, but inside the cathedral, on the north transept, if you were just walking in, like on the normal level in the nave, there's a little mouse. What is it? The end, the termination end. But there's a cat.
The label
and
mold termination.
But there's the
of an
cat
arch.
and the mouse. But I just like the mouse on the one side. But then, I know this isn't on the building. Also, if you go into like through the gift shop, there's the rejected gargoyle, and he has a soft spot in my heart because he's just this like little skeleton who would collect too much water. Like gargoyles are supposed to be a water diversion, and he's too, I don't know, it has too many like spots in him, but he's pretty cool too.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I actually know where the cat and mouse are in the cathedral. And over there, I love the cannons that are carved around the entrance to the slipe.
Oh, yeah.
Since many of our clergy and others who are part of the cathedral are called canons, they go through the slipe, which is this pass-through, and so they put cannons on either side of the slipe.
I do like those cannons, yeah. Good one.
I always try to point those out to visitors when
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon and for shedding some light on what it means to be a stonemason and carver at the cathedral and out in the world. We are so fortunate to have you all as part of our team and can't thank you enough for all that you've done to bring this building to life.
Well, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us.
I hope you'll tune in to our next episode on the podcast as Cathedral clergy Canon Jan Cope and Father Spencer Brown join me. We'll be exploring the cathedral's theme this year, A Better Way, learning to live together, listen to each other, and find a way forward as a nation. The three of us will explore finding common ground, dealing with anxiety, and how we handle disappointment and disillusion as we approach the presidential election this fall. As always, thanks for listening to Crossroads, and until next time, peace be with you. If the digital offerings of the cathedral enrich your daily life, please consider becoming a supporter today by making a gift at cathedral.org/inspire.